Welcome back to Our Justice Journey with Karega Bailey, Part 4, and we thank you for your continued interest in this discussion.
This is
I thank you for, sharing your knowledge and stuff, to even go off your point on just like art, you know what I mean? Like your whole idea of like inspiring and releasing, I feel like when I write poetry, it's a release, you know what I
hmm
mean?
hmm
Sometimes I might not perform it, sometimes, all this stuff, but it's a part of our healing, I think, because sometimes just you have to I feel like sometimes you understand like what you're feeling more when you write it out or when you push it out or something like that, or you express it, you know what I mean? And I
yeah,
feel like sometimes when I read back, when I read it back or whatever it is, you know what I mean? Like, it's like I can understand more, I can look at it from, like, a different point of view, and then it's almost like a step back to step forward type thing.
absolutely, absolutely. I think that the writing too, especially with your poetry, when you say like whether you perform it or not,
Mhm,
it's it's a part of you that's growing
mhm.
for you,
Yeah.
right? That release that you talked about, it's
Mhm.
like how we stretch
Yeah.
and take capacity and take deep breaths
Mhm.
and then go again. You're right. Like
Mhm.
writing can feel very much like that early morning stretch, and you gotta get all
Yeah.
the out. I totally agree.
Yeah. So then our next question is, do you believe that there's one pathway to do social justice work that is most influential?
Uh, I do not believe there's one way to do social justice work, and I think that the better we become at accepting there are multiple ways, is the more social justice we'll see.
Yeah.
Right? Um, it doesn't look the same in all areas. It doesn't look the same from all walks of life, and
Mhm.
all people won't go about um, change the same way. But being able to listen to people about what their needs are is what's most important, right? So
Mhm.
not putting somebody in a box. You have to sound like this. You have to package your proposal like this. It's like, no, if somebody's telling you what they need,
Mhm.
hopefully you can adapt your listening to hear,
Yeah.
right? So I think we're getting better at making room for different types of um, advocacy.
Mhm.
Uh, because they do a whole lot of like imposing of like all these barriers to
Mhm.
stop themselves from hearing what people need,
Mhm.
right? Everybody's not going to submit a proposal.
Yeah.
Everybody's not going to be an APA,
Mhm.
right? Like it's not going to go like that. But people
Yeah.
can tell you what they need if you develop the capacity to hear them.
Mhm.
So I think no, I would like us to develop capacity to hear more
Mhm.
than trying to uniform everybody's advocacy in one way.
Mhm. I love that. And then what was a book that you read when you were young that greatly impacted you and why?
Oh, a book that I read when I was young that greatly impacted me. There was Felicia will hopefully she doesn't get too upset with me. Um, there's a book called Cool Pose,
Mhm.
and it was by Richard G. Majors. Now, Felicia points out that it was also co-authored by another woman author, and
Mhm.
I want to give credit to her. I don't remember her name,
Mhm.
not because she's a woman, but because the way my visual memory set up, the way the name appeared on the text.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the art of the text right now. You get what I'm saying? That's
Yeah.
how. But Cool Pose, it gave me this deeper understanding to like black masculinity and choice behavior,
Mhm.
and it was just talking about like this essentially this pose by which um we present cool or choose cool,
Mhm.
but will do so to a flaw.
Mm.
The inability to apologize, the inability to reconcile,
Mhm.
right? um the inability to change one's mind, hoping to preserve this cool, is
Mm.
what the author was talking about. And
Mhm.
at that time, I had seen that cool pose like manifest so vastly in my neighborhood growing up, in my community,
Mhm.
and me losing peers to, I think, conflict that became violence that could have been easily resolved otherwise.
Mhm.
And I deeply wanted us to see another way to live, to be, to coexist.
Mhm.
Um, so that, yeah, that work was paramount on me because it first helped me show up for the population that looked like me,
Mm,
that had similar lived experiences as me.
yeah.
And yeah, I've just always deeply cared about the Black lived experiences.
Hmm. And to that, you were talking about when you were younger, like when you were in high school, what advice, if you could look back, what advice do you think you would give to your younger self with all that you know now?
Write, write. Never stop writing. Love writing. Find your voice. Like, write.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I would encourage myself to like, I would encourage all young people to like, just do not lose your voice.
Hmm.
It gets so multi-layered and convoluted, especially as now we have the World Wide Web right in our palms.
Hmm.
So it's even more important to know who you are and know your voice.
Hmm.
I think writing for me, um, it's really just been this lifeline.
Hmm.
Uh, and when I see Felicia do it at the level that she does and the level that she can, for the listeners out there, Felicia is my lovely wife, um, my friend and thought partner. She's fierce. I love the way she can communicate her ideas
Hmm.
and feelings, and I love the discipline she has to sit with them for time. Right?
Hmm.
Um, yeah. So I would tell myself to write, um, and then I would tell myself like other little practical things,
Hmm.
like I would have learned personal finance. It's just
Yeah.
crazy. Like I know it's a huge jump, but like, yeah, I would have just understood what agency I had, what power I had
Hmm.
as it relates to personal finance.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I would have liked to inform myself differently. Right, I'm kind of learning some of these lessons now.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, it's crazy that you asked me what I give my younger self, but like just writing has been so important to me.
Yeah.
It lets you show up in spaces even when you're not in the room.
Hmm.
Right? Rooms that you don't have invitation to. Your writing can make it there.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, writing and finance.
I think the main thing about life is that we never stop learning, you know what I mean?
Yeah, for real, for real,
Yeah.
for real.
So our
Yep.
last question is, in your organization, be imaginative. How do you create a safe space for youth where they feel comfortable to put their pain on display in order to work towards healing?
I think that we are getting better and better at this. We're still learning.
Mhm.
Um, and when I say still learning, it's just like what makes somebody feel safe in a space is after grief, after loss. It's not, it's multivariate. You got to find all these different practices to make that space really reflective of what someone needs.
Mhm.
But we do that through showing up as our full selves.
Mhm.
Um, we do that by modeling our openness. I do that by um, bringing into the space my dear brother Kareem,
Mhm.
right? A brilliant educator who we lost in Sacramento in 2014. So I'm open about my experiences, about the anger, about the grief,
Mhm.
um, about the love. I'm very honest about the love. It has been challenging in new ways to create safe space for young people
Mhm.
because in many spaces the violence and the loss hasn't stopped, but we aren't able to hold space in community the way we previously were able to.
Mhm.
So we are pivoting our practices um, to make more room for young people.
Yeah.
Uh, I find that I'm using one-on-one check-ins a lot more.
Mhm.
Um, but I think this safe space curating that we're doing is to create a model by which folks learn how to create safe spaces for themselves, for their communities.
Mm.
Um, the model isn't so that we're the facilitator of every safe space. The model is to create new facilitators for safe spaces.
Yeah.
In my writing from a couple years ago, it's funny, I talk about we're going to have to learn to make safe spaces in our cars, in our neighborhoods, on the corner.
Yeah.
Uh, like we're going to have to really rethink safe space,
Mhm.
right? Because it may not always look like a building or an office or a room. It might just look like being available.
Mhm.
It might just look like pulling up. and talking to them. It might look like a porch conversation. It might look like a car conversation. And I know that all porches aren't safe. And I know that all cars in certain neighborhoods aren't safe. But we're gonna have to be a whole lot. We're gonna have to increase our imagination, right? We're gonna have to be imaginative, if you will, about how we're creating these safe spaces that are available and present for young people, not always requiring them to travel to the safe space. So we're gonna have to learn how to make safe spaces where we at, right? And that comes from, I think, we only move at the speed of trust. So it comes from relationship building. It comes from showing up and making love present. Sometimes there are levels of grief that have no answers, no answers for anyone. But do you have the courage to stand with that person? To let them know that your love is present with them, even if it doesn't have answers.
Yeah.
Will you let them know that your love is present?
I like your whole philosophy on, you know, creating safe spaces, but also like passing it to teach other people to make safe spaces for themselves. I never really thought of it like that, but I also think that's like super duper important because, you know, let's say you have like a class, you know, every Tuesday or whatever, but once people leave that class, you know, life goes on. They're still gonna need that safe space, even if that it's not Tuesday and it's not that class, you know what I mean?
Precisely. That's exactly what I'm saying. And if we create a world where we have more agency and more of us are creating more safe spaces, well, that's a world I want to be a part of.
Yeah.
That's the world I want to imagine and being part of, where we
Mhm.
have more safe spaces than not.
Yes, yes. Safe spaces are so important, especially in this, you know, all this time and all the chaos and everything, but just those safe space and also the safe spaces I think within ourselves. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. That's the first one.
Mhm.
That's the first one.
Yes. So we thank you, Karega, once again for being such an amazing contribution to this discussion and hope to continue connecting with you in the future. Thank you again to our listeners for being a part of this discussion as well. We hope that you enjoyed our podcast. Make sure to keep up to date with new stories and interviews in the near future.